Have you ever paused to consider what lies beneath the surface of things? Not just objects or people, but your own identity, your thoughts, your emotions, the very sense of I that seems so solid. What if all of it was empty? Not meaningless, but open, fluid, interconnected, and ever-changing. In this episode of the School of Buddha, we explore one of the most transformative and often misunderstood concepts in Buddhist philosophy, Sunyata, or the wisdom of emptiness. Emptiness does not mean nothingness. It's not a cold void or nihilistic despair. In fact, it's the exact opposite. Emptiness, as taught by the Buddha and later expanded upon in Mahayana Buddhism, is a doorway to profound freedom. It shows us that nothing exists in isolation, and nothing has an independent, unchanging essence. Not our problems, not our ego, not even suffering itself. Everything is interdependent, conditioned, and impermanent. And once we realize this truth, not just intellectually but deeply, we begin to loosen the grip of fear, craving, and attachment. Welcome back to the School of Buddha. This is episode 34 of our special podcast series on Buddhism and Theme 7, which consists of advanced Buddhist concepts. In today's episode, we'll explore what Sunyata really means. We'll talk about how it differs from Western ideas of void or absence. We'll unpack why realizing emptiness is so liberating, and how this insight can shift how we relate to ourselves, to others, and to the world. We'll also look at how the concept evolved in Buddhist schools like Madhyamaka, and how meditation becomes a tool to directly experience this emptiness, not as a theory, but as a lived reality. By the end of this episode, you'll see that emptiness is not the absence of meaning. It is the spaciousness that makes meaning, connection, and compassion possible. To understand emptiness, we must first let go of how we normally perceive reality. Most of us walk through life assuming that things, including ourselves, have an inherent, fixed essence. A chair is a chair. A person is a person. I am who I am. This assumption feels natural, but according to the Buddha, it's a deep misunderstanding. It's the root of much of our suffering. Emptiness, or sunyata, teaches us that no thing exists independently, permanently, or in isolation. Everything arises through a web of causes and conditions. Nothing possesses a core, separate identity that exists on its own. The chair exists because of wood, the carpenter, the forest, the tools, the need to sit. Remove any of these, and the chair disappears. Likewise, you are not a static self. You are a process, a flowing river of thoughts, memories, emotions, biology, language, culture, and relationships. In early Buddhism, this insight begins with anatta, the doctrine of non-self, which tells us that there is no unchanging essence behind our personality. Later, Mahayana schools, especially Madhyamaka, expanded this into a universal principle. All things are empty of inherent existence. That means the world is not made up of solid, separate things, but of interdependent processes. But here's what's beautiful. Emptiness is not a negation, it's a revelation. It shows us that because nothing is fixed, everything is possible. Because our identity isn't locked into a static self, we can change. Because emotions are not permanent, they can pass. Because conditions shape reality, we can transform those conditions. The concept of emptiness is often misunderstood in the West as nihilism, but Buddhism doesn't teach that nothing exists. It teaches that things don't exist in the way we think they do, as independent, permanent objects. They exist relationally, impermanently, conditionally. Sunyata is not the absence of life. It is life, stripped of illusion. It is not the denial of reality, but a more accurate and compassionate way of seeing it. When people first hear that everything is empty, it can sound unsettling, even frightening. We fear that if nothing has a fixed identity, then nothing has meaning. But the Buddhist view of emptiness is not a statement of despair. It is a profound key to freedom. To truly understand Sunyata is to break the chains of suffering at their root. Much of our pain arises from our tendency to grasp, grasping at things, people, status, and even at the idea of ourselves. We build identities around labels. I am successful. I am a failure. I am this kind of person. We cling to relationships expecting permanence. We resist change because we're attached to the illusion that things should stay the same. But everything changes. Relationships shift. Health declines. Status fluctuates. Loved ones pass. And when we try to hold on to what cannot be held, we suffer. Now imagine what happens when we deeply realize that nothing has a fixed, unchanging nature. The labels we cling to become lighter. The identities we defend so fiercely begin to soften. We stop reacting to life as if it's attacking me, and begin to see that both the attacker and the attacked are processes in motion. Anger, fear, shame, pride. These emotions lose their grip when we stop believing they define who we are. In that space of emptiness, there is room to breathe. There is freedom to respond, not react. There is clarity to see that pain is part of life, but suffering is optional. If nothing is fixed, then everything is fluid, open, transformable. Even our deepest wounds can be healed. Even our most rigid beliefs can evolve. The liberating power of emptiness lies in its ability to dissolve the false walls we've built between self and other, success and failure, joy and sorrow. When we see that all things are interdependent, we stop trying to control everything. We stop clinging. We stop fearing. Instead, we begin to flow, with grace, with wisdom, with compassion. That's why Sunyata is not just a philosophy. It's a medicine. It's a lens that transforms how we live, love, and let go. Understanding emptiness intellectually is one thing, but to truly benefit from this teaching, we must experience it directly. In Buddhism, that's exactly what meditation is for. It's not merely about relaxation or stress relief. It is a disciplined training of the mind to see reality clearly, to pierce through our assumptions, habits, and illusions until we come face to face with the fluid, interdependent nature of all things. When you sit in meditation, watching your breath or observing your thoughts, a shift begins to occur. At first, you notice the obvious, that your mind wanders, that your body fidgets, that you carry stress and restlessness. But with time and sustained attention, you begin to see something deeper, that your thoughts don't arise from nowhere, and they don't belong to a fixed you. They arise from causes, mood, memory, tension, sensations, and then pass away. You begin to realize that even your sense of self is not a solid core, but a collection of mental events flickering in and out of awareness. One moment you feel confident, the next ashamed. One moment peaceful, the next irritated. You notice that feelings arise, stay a while, and dissolve, like waves in an ocean. This is the beginning of insight into emptiness. You see clearly that everything is in motion, everything is conditioned, everything is impermanent. There is no emotion, thought, or identity that you can hold on to as truly mine or me. This is not about becoming detached or indifferent. In fact, it's the opposite. The more we realize emptiness, the less reactive we become, and the more we can meet life with compassion. When we understand that the angry person in front of us is not evil or fixed but caught in a web of causes, upbringing, stress, ignorance, fear, we respond with patience instead of hatred. When we see that our own anxiety is not a personal flaw but a conditioned habit, we stop blaming ourselves and begin to hold our experience with kindness. Meditation on emptiness can be subtle, even disorienting. Some traditions, like Zen, encourage practitioners to sit with open awareness, allowing thoughts and sensations to arise without attachment. Others, like in the Tibetan tradition, engage in analytical meditation, breaking down the components of identity or external phenomena to reveal their lack of inherent existence. In both cases, the aim is not to reach a void, but to rest in a spacious clarity, a mind that sees things as they are, without distortion. With repeated practice, something incredible happens. The boundaries that separate you from the world begin to dissolve. You begin to feel that you are not separate from others, from nature, from the unfolding of life itself. This is not a mystical experience, but a natural consequence of seeing things without the filter of mine, self, or should be. Emptiness becomes spaciousness, spaciousness becomes freedom, and freedom becomes compassion. As we continue exploring the depth of emptiness, it is important to understand that the Buddha did not teach this concept as a denial of existence, nor did he teach that everything is solid, permanent, or absolute. Instead, he offered a path of balance, a path known as the middle path, which navigates between the extremes of eternalism, the belief that things have an eternal, unchanging essence, and nihilism, the belief that nothing matters because nothing exists. The middle way is subtle, yet revolutionary. It asks us to hold two truths at once, that things exist, but not in the way we think they do. Chairs exist, emotions exist, people exist, but they do not exist independently, permanently, or with an unchanging identity. This view allows us to engage with the world fully while remaining free from delusion. Let's take an example. Imagine a wave in the ocean. Does the wave exist? Yes. It moves, it rises, it falls. But does it have a separate, independent existence apart from the ocean, the wind, the moon's gravity, and countless other factors? No. The wave is real, but it is empty of an independent essence. In the same way, everything in life arises in relationship. Everything is empty because it is full of everything else. The middle way, especially as articulated by Nagarjuna, the great Indian philosopher who developed the Madhyamaka school, guides us away from clinging to concepts. Nagarjuna famously said, "Whatever is dependently originated is empty. That which is empty is dependently originated." This is the profound insight that emptiness and interdependence are two sides of the same coin. Emptiness does not negate the world. It liberates it from rigid definitions and expectations. This wisdom has immense practical value. When we don't fall into the trap of eternalism, we stop idolizing things, people, or identities. We understand that even the best moments will pass, and so we enjoy them fully without clinging. On the other hand, when we avoid nihilism, we don't fall into despair. We recognize that although everything is impermanent and empty, it still matters. Our choices matter. Our compassion matters. Our suffering and our healing matter deeply. In daily life, this perspective transforms how we relate to everything. We become less reactive and more responsive, less caught in drama and more grounded in clarity. We stop expecting life to be stable and instead learn to dance with its rhythms. The middle way is not a theory. It is a liberating view that helps us walk through life with open eyes, open heart, and steady feet. One of the most beautiful truths in Buddhism is that emptiness does not negate compassion, it deepens it. In fact, in Mahayana Buddhism, realizing Sunyata and cultivating compassion are considered two wings of the same bird. You cannot fly with one alone. If emptiness frees the mind from delusion, compassion opens the heart to others. And the more deeply we realize that everything is empty of a separate self, the more naturally our sense of separation begins to dissolve. What remains is connection. What arises is love. You see, when we believe in solid, independent selves, we often build walls, us versus them, self versus other, right versus wrong. These divisions harden our views and contract our hearts. But when we see that there is no fixed self inside us or in others, a radical shift takes place. The boundaries soften. We begin to understand that we are not isolated individuals navigating a hostile world. We are part of a vast, interdependent web of life. Everyone, even those we dislike or fear, is caught in the same web of causes and conditions. Everyone suffers. Everyone longs for peace. And here's the paradox. The more we realize the emptiness of self, the more we care for others. This is not theoretical. It is deeply experiential. When you no longer cling to your ego as something to defend, you stop reacting out of pride, fear, or competition. You begin to listen more. You become gentler. Your compassion is no longer sentimental or performative. It's grounded, wise, and fearless. This is why some of the greatest expressions of love arise not from people trying to be good, but from those who see clearly. They don't act out of moral obligation. They act because they see no difference between themselves and others. Compassion in this context is not a strategy. It is an expression of wisdom. It flows effortlessly, like light from the sun, like water from a spring. And this is the great message of emptiness. Because nothing is fixed, everything can change. Suffering is not inevitable. Healing is always possible. And love is not limited to those we know. It can extend to all beings, because at the deepest level, there is no self and other. There is only this shared dance of existence. So, emptiness is not a void we fall into. It's a vast openness we awaken into. It holds the world, with all its sorrow and beauty, not with detachment, but with understanding. And in that understanding, compassion blooms like a lotus rising from the mud, pure, radiant, and rooted in truth. As we arrive at the end of this journey into Sunyata, let us take a moment to reflect not just on what we've heard, but what we've felt. Emptiness is not a doctrine to be memorized or debated. It is a truth to be lived. It is not a rejection of life, but an invitation to live it with greater clarity, flexibility, and compassion. When you realize that no thought, no emotion, no identity, no situation is fixed or final, you start to breathe easier. The weight you've carried begins to lighten. You stop clinging so tightly to your image, your beliefs, your regrets, your anxieties. You see that they are all just clouds passing through the sky of awareness. They come, they go, and in between there is a vastness, a stillness, that has always been there. That stillness is not empty in the way we usually understand it. It is full of possibility. In the light of emptiness, even the most painful experiences lose their sharpness. Not because they vanish, but because we are no longer chained to them by the illusion of permanence. We begin to understand that we don't have to fix or control everything. We can let things arise, let them pass, and respond with wisdom, rather than react out of habit. That is freedom. And in this freedom, we discover something extraordinary. Our hearts open, not out of effort, but out of understanding. When we see that all beings are caught in the same dream of separation, the natural response is not judgment, but compassion. We begin to live not just for ourselves, but for the shared liberation of all beings. That is the essence of the path. That is the wisdom of emptiness. So today I invite you to carry this insight with you. The next time you find yourself caught in anger, pause and ask, is this solid? Is this who I really am? The next time you cling to an identity or expectation, gently remind yourself, this too is empty. This too will pass. And when you meet others, especially those who challenge you, see if you can soften the walls of separation and feel the deep interconnection beneath it all. Emptiness is not far away. It is right here, in the breath, in this moment, in the space between thoughts. And if you rest in it, even for a moment, you may find that you are not falling into a void, but waking up into a freedom that has always been yours. If this episode touched you, if it helped you see the world a little more clearly, then I invite you to like, share, and leave a comment below. What does emptiness mean to you? How have you experienced it in your life? And don't forget to subscribe to the School of Buddha for more explorations of the teachings that free us. Please don't forget to support the channel by sharing our content or using the thanks button below the videos. Remember, we are able to run the special podcast series only because of your support. In our next episode, we'll explore what it means to realize enlightenment in daily life, not as some distant mountain peak, but as a path we walk step by step, here and now. Until then, stay mindful, stay open, and keep walking the path.